come to build a bridge, so come let's build. Build, build, build. I'll come to build a bridge, so come let's build. Build, build, build. I'll come to build a bridge.
Hello and welcome. So now that we have explored a little bit what leverage points are and how they work, let's deep dive into the Iceberg model. Today we'll be using the Iceberg model to explore a wicked problem, specifically racism. But first, what is a wicked problem? A wicked problem is a social or cultural problem that is very difficult to solve because of its complex and interconnected nature. And because of this complexity and interconnectedness, sometimes trying to fix one aspect of a wicked problem aggravates another aspect. However, if we're able to detect the root causes of the wicked problem, we are more capable of identifying leverage points that can address those root causes. Right, so the Iceberg model can help us detect the root causes of a wicked problem by creating a pattern-based framework for helping us dive deep into the complex issue. When we are going down the iceberg, it is important for us to identify two things: patterns and outliers. Patterns, in this case, are specific observations that are related in each layer of the iceberg or between the layers. Outliers are observations that are quite unique and don't maybe fit into a specific pattern, but have some value to contribute to helping us understand the problem much better. Another important element to take into consideration when we are doing the iceberg analysis are the questions that we ask. So we can be as simple as asking why every time we go down the iceberg. Or we can ask questions such as, what structures underline the behaviors that we see? So let's take the iceberg for a test drive and tackle the wicked problem of racism, but just how we are seeing it in our community, be it a school, a neighborhood. And on a quick technical note, to do this exercise on your own, you will need to print or draw the iceberg on a piece of paper and have post-it notes on hand. Alternatively, you can use a mind mapping application like Mural or Miro and use digital post-its. And for today's example, we will be using a digital version of the iceberg. So for this exercise, we will start at the actions layer. And first, we write down on post-its how racism is visible in the daily activities of our community. Next, we look for common patterns amongst the post-its. Are some of them related to each other? Please group them and name the patterns that you see with different colored or shaped post-its. Okay, so once we are finished noting these patterns, we move to the behavior layer. Here we write down observations about how racism is present and how we interact with each other as friends, as neighbors, clients, businesses, producers, consumers, public administration. Next, we look for common patterns amongst these post-its. Are some of them related to each other? Generating a pattern of behavior. Please group them and name the patterns that you see with a different colored or shaped post-it. So once we have defined the different patterns of behavior related to racism, we move on to the structure layer. Now, what are the underlying structures that are generating these behaviors? This could include governance structures, for example, like how decisions are made in the community. Or this could include how our institutions are structured, for example, if they are accessible or inclusive or responsive to social changes. Do you see other similar structures? Put these down here too. Next, we look for common patterns amongst the post-its. Are some of them related to each other? Please group them and name the patterns that you see with different colored post-its. Do you see any other post-its that are not fitting in any other group, but that are still nonetheless worth noting? Put a small star beside these outliers. And as we know from the leverage points video, here at this layer, at structure, is where we can start detecting the deeper causes to the complex issue of racism in our communities, which will help us identify leverage points later on. So once we have identified the patterns at the structural layer, it is time for us to move to the strategy layer. And given that we've noted patterns of structural racism, this means that there is a common strategy generating these structures. This does not mean that we're talking about conspiracy, but it does mean that these structures can be a consequence of a seemingly unrelated strategy based on privilege. Let's note down these strategies or policies or plans that could be generating the structural racism that we have observed. We can note down other strategies that demonstrate similar colonial patterns as well. It is also important to note down strategies, policies, or plans that might be missing, which permit racism to persist. And once we have noted these strategies, policies, and plans down, let's look for common patterns amongst the post-its. Are some of them related to each other? Please group them and name the patterns that you see with a different colored post-it. Do any of these post-its not fit in a group, but are nonetheless contributing valuable insight? Put a small star beside these outliers. The last layer is the paradigm layer, and this is where the most significant root causes can be found. This layer has the most transformative content, but is also the most difficult to grasp. If we are producing policies or plans or strategies that have a common blind spot that is generating structural violence, this means that there is something that we are assuming is a common belief or principle and that needs deep reflection. This common cultural mindset, embedded and invisible to us, defines how we understand and create our society. At this point, we can write down what ways of thinking do we have that are generating these strategies. What principles, paradigms, or purpose underlie the strategic patterns listed above? Please group these common patterns and name them using a different colored post-it. And do any of these post-its not fit in a group, but are nonetheless contributing something quite interesting to our analysis? Put a small star beside these outliers. Once we have filled up our post-it with pattern post-its for each layer, let's see if we can find patterns between the layers. So what stories do these patterns across the layers tell us? What root causes do these stories point towards? Is there a common thread weaving the outliers together? And if so, what story does this tell us too? This helps us detect potential root causes of racism in our community, which we can mark with a distinct shape or sticker. We have now gone to the deepest patterns of our society, which in this case relate to cultural racism. It is important to understand that these patterns of cultural violence can be based on fear, rage, hurt, or other collective emotions, but also that these emotions can be regenerated. However, to do so, we need to fully embrace the change that is needed without guilt or blame, but with full responsibility. These are exciting times where we can generate new foundations for our society. And deep crises imply deep opportunities for transformation, and we need to face this process with hope and determination. Thank you for watching this video. Now that we have identified some potential root causes of racism in our community, thanks to the detection of patterns and outliers, this will help us detect leverage points. Please see the next video on reconciliation for one way to do this. Thank you.
Protect clean water, said I've come to live in peace. So come, let's live. Live, live, live. I have come to live.